Listen well, for I will tell you a story that the old women whisper when the harmattan winds blow cold. This is not a tale of kings in golden palaces or warriors with bronze shields. No, this is the story of a day, the boy who tried to wash blood with blood and learned that some stains run deeper than the great lagoon itself. You know that moment, don't you? When the sky grows heavy before the rains? When the air becomes thick enough to chew, and even the market women pause their haggling to sniff the wind? That is how Ebuteana always smells, like a storm that never quite breaks, like thunder trapped in a bottle. But on the day little Aday's world cracked like a dropped calabash, the air tasted different. It tasted of iron and endings. Dum, 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 went the drums of the Ayo masqueraders, their white robes flowing like spirits dancing between the living and the dead. 10-year-old Aday pressed close to his father's leg, feeling safe in that shadow, watching the masked figures spin and leap. His father's hand rested warm on his shoulder. A good hand, honest from years of fishing the lagoon's silver-backed children. Papa, Aday whispered, tugging at his father's agbada. Why do some of the masqueraders look angry? His father's grip tightened, but before he could answer, the drum stopped. In folk tales, we say that when the drums stop, the spirits are listening. What they heard that day was the sound of justice being murdered in broad daylight. The first gunshot cracked like lightning without thunder. The second followed like its echo, and by the third, the white robes of celebration had become the white robes of death. Aday's father crumpled, his blood spreading across the dusty ground like spilled palm oil, dark and final. As little Aday knelt beside his dying father, pressing his small hands against the wound that would not be healed, he tasted something new in the air. Not just iron now, but something bitter and ancient. The taste of a debt that would compound like interest in a moneylender's ledger. The boy who believed in tomorrow died that day. In his place, a ghost was born, walking among the living with eyes that had seen too much. But wait, the storyteller cries, striking his talking drum. This is not yet the darkest part of our tale. For even in Ebuteana, where hope is rationed like rice in drought season, sometimes a single candle can light an entire room. That candle's name was Jide. Brother Jide found Aday 3 years later, haunting the docks like a lost spirit. The boy had grown tall but not strong, thin as a fishing line, and twice as likely to snap. Jide saw the ghost boy and did something unexpected. He smiled. Not with pity, but with recognition. Ah, said Jide, crouching to meet Aday's hollow gaze. Another son of this wicked place. But see here, small brother, wickedness is not destiny. Wah! Under Jide's wing, Aday learned to read numbers instead of coffin faces. He learned to build bridges instead of walls. For 3 precious years, the ghost boy remembered what it felt like to breathe freely. Jide's compound became a haven where young men learned trades instead of violence, where the only shots fired were of palm wine in celebration of small victories. Aday even learned to laugh again, a rusty sound at first, like an old gate being opened, but real nonetheless. He had found not just a mentor, but a father's love reborn. Ah, but you know how these stories go, don't you? The old storyteller shakes his gray head. Light that burns too bright attracts the attention of creatures that feed on darkness. Every neighborhood has its spider, the one who sits at the center of every web, feeling every tremor, every struggle of those caught in the silk. In Ebuteana, that spider wore expensive suits and answered to the name Basir. Basir had watched Jide's light grow brighter with the patient attention of a predator. Success that didn't pay him tribute was rebellion. Hope that didn't feed his coffers was a revolution. And revolution, in Basir's philosophy, was a disease that required surgical removal. The surgery was performed on a Tuesday morning, precise and final. Ade found Jide in his office, slumped over the ledger where he'd been recording the week's honest earnings. The same iron smell that had haunted Ade's nightmares filled the room. But this time, it mixed with something else. The scent of betrayal. Bitter as cassava leaves before cooking, the note left behind was simple. Some dreams are too expensive for poor neighborhoods. Standing over his second father's body, Ade felt something crack inside his chest. Not his heart. That had been broken years ago. This was deeper. This was the sound of his soul splitting in two, one half falling into an abyss so deep that light could not reach the bottom. Now listen carefully, children. The storyteller leans forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. For this is where our tale becomes a warning. Orphaned twice with nowhere else to turn. Ade and his companions, fierce Amara, with her grandmother's war stories in her blood, and pragmatic Lekan, who counted every naira twice, found themselves swallowed by Basir's machine. Basir was everything Jide was not. Where Jide had warm palm wine shared among friends, Basir had cold beer alone. Where Jide built up, Basir tore down. Where Jide planted, Basir harvested what others had sown. Under Basir's command, Ade learned new skills. How to make grown men weep with just a look. How to collect debts written in blood instead of ink. How to speak the language of fear so fluently that even children crossed the street when they saw him coming. Each lesson was a betrayal. Each order followed was another step away from the boy his father had raised. Another step away from the man Jide had tried to shape. But in Ebuteyana, you either bend with the wind or you break. And Ade had already broken once. The transformation was slow, like rust claiming iron. Day by day, choice by choice, the ghost boy disappeared, and in his place stood someone harder, colder, more useful to Basir's purposes. Ade became the perfect soldier, empty enough to be filled with any purpose, broken enough to break others. But even perfect soldiers can hesitate. And in Basir's world, hesitation is a luxury paid for in blood. The job should have been simple. Collect from a trader who thought he was clever enough to skim from Basir's percentage. But when they cornered the man in his small shop, surrounded by sacks of rice and tins of tomatoes, something went wrong. Maybe it was the family photo tucked behind the cash register. A smiling woman and 3 children who looked like they still believed in tomorrow. Maybe it was the way the trader's hand shook as he counted out bills. The same tremor Ade remembered in his own father's hands on that last day. Whatever it was, Ade hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, the trader reached for something hidden beneath his counter. Lekan, always quick to act, was quicker still. The gunshot seemed to echo forever in the small space, bouncing off the walls like a trapped bird. Lekan fell backward into the rice sacks, his blood mixing with the scattered grains like some terrible offering to angry gods. His last words were a whispered apology, not to Ade or Amara, but to his mother, who had worked 3 jobs to keep him in school before the streets claimed him anyway. That night, the fragile peace that had held Ebute-Na's various factions apart shattered like a dropped mirror. Territory lines became battle lines, the air filled with the sound of automatic weapons, and the great lagoon reflected the glow of burning buildings like a broken sunset. But in the chaos of war, secrets have a way of surfacing like corpses after a flood. It was Amara who brought Ade the news, her face grim as a funeral mask. She found him cleaning his gun on the roof of their hideout, watching the city burn below like a modern Sodom. I know who killed Jide, she said without preamble. The gun oil gleamed black on Ade's hands as he looked up. Tell me. Basir gave the order himself. One of his old lieutenants got drunk, started bragging about the surgery they performed on your mentor. For a moment, the night was perfectly still. Even the distant gunfire seemed to pause. Then Ade began to laugh, a sound like breaking glass, like lightning splitting the sky, like the last breath of a dying god. The pattern of his life, which had been one long slow fall, suddenly reversed. The hunted became the hunter. The pawn became the player. The ghost boy who had been shaped by others' hands finally picked up the chisel himself. And what did he carve, you ask? The storyteller's eyes gleam in the firelight. Ah, that is where our story becomes a hurricane. What followed was not war. War has rules, honor, some concept of fair play. This was systematic destruction, as methodical as a farmer burning his field before replanting. Ade moved through Basir's organization like fever through a body, turning strength into weakness, loyalty into betrayal, order into chaos. He whispered the right words into the right ears, planted evidence in the right places, lit fires that could not be extinguished. He turned lieutenants against each other with carefully leaked information. He exposed decades-old secrets that shattered alliances overnight. He became the puppet master, and Basir's own network became the strings that would strangle its creator. The streets ran red not just with blood, but with the collapse of an empire built on fear and greed. Basir, the spider at the center of the web, felt his silk threads snapping one by one, leaving him exposed and alone. The end came not in the streets where it began, but in Basir's air-conditioned office, high above the burning city. No dramatic shootout, no hail of bullets, just two men in a room, surrounded by the silence of absolute power, about to meet absolute determination. Basir sat behind his mahogany desk, still immaculate despite the chaos below. He poured himself a glass of expensive whiskey and gestured to a chair across from him. Sit, boy. Let us talk like civilized men. But Ade remained standing, his presence filling the room like smoke. You killed him! I solved a problem. Basir's voice carried no remorse, only the casual indifference of a man swatting a fly. Jide was weak. He believed this place could be saved, that these people could be lifted up. I know better. Ebute Ana can only be ruled, never redeemed. He was my father. No. Basir leaned forward, his smile sharp as a blade. I am your father now. I made you. Every skill you used to destroy my organization, I taught you. Every move you made against me, you learned at my side. You think you're fighting me, but you've already become me. For a moment, the weight of those words settled over Ade like a burial shroud. In the reflection of the office window, he saw not the boy who had knelt beside his father's bleeding body, but something darker, harder, shaped by years of violence and loss. But then he remembered something else. Jide's laugh, warm as palm wine, the sound of children learning to read in the compound's courtyard, the taste of hope before it soured into revenge. You're wrong, Ade said quietly. I'm not fighting you to become you. I'm fighting you to prove that this place is worth more than your vision of it. When the sun rose over Ebute Ana the next morning, Basir's empire had crumbled to ash. The spider at the center of the web was gone, his threads cut, his influence scattered like dust in the Harmattan wind. Ade stood on the rooftop where he had once cleaned his guns, looking down at the streets that now fell under his shadow. The city was quiet. Not with peace, but with the cautious silence of people waiting to see what kind of ruler their new king would be. His hands, stained with years of choices that could never be undone, trembled as he gripped the rooftop's edge. He had won. He had avenged both his fathers. He had the power to remake Ebute-Na in whatever image he chose. But as he looked at his reflection in a puddle of last night's rain, he saw something that made his blood turn cold. Basir's smile, wearing his face. The old women say that when you fight monsters, you must be careful not to become one yourself. They say that when you stare too long into the abyss stares back. But they never mention what happens when you realize you've been staring at your own reflection all along. And so, children of the lagoon, the storyteller concludes, his voice heavy with the weight of unfinished tales, our story ends where it began, with a question hanging in the air like the scent of a storm that may never break. Ade saved Ebute-Na from a tyrant, but who will save it from its hero? He cut the head off the serpent, but in doing so, did he simply take its place? Can a man wash blood with blood and still claim clean hands? The air still tastes of salt and iron. The cage is still there, strong as ever, its bars gleaming in the morning light. Only now, Ade holds the key, and the weight of that key is heavier than any chain. Some say that on quiet nights, when the wind carries voices from the lagoon, you can still hear the ghost of that 10-year-old boy calling to the man who wears his name, asking him to remember what it felt like to believe in tomorrow. But the man on the rooftop can no longer hear such voices. He has grown deaf to everything but the sound of his own heartbeat, steady and cold as a machine counting money. And that, children, is why the old women warn, be careful what you sacrifice for power, for you may find that what you've paid is the very thing that made power worth having. The storm that Ade became has passed, leaving Ebute-Na forever changed. But storms, as we know, have a way of returning. And the next one might be strong enough to wash away even the memory of the boy who once knelt beside his father's body, believing that justice and love could coexist in this cruel, beautiful world. The drums have stopped, the spirits have heard, and the story waits for its next chapter to be written in the dust and dreams of those who still believe that cages can be broken from the inside out.